My name is Sandra Shields, and I'm a practitioner at the Center for Spiritual Living in Crescenta. And a practitioner is lay clergy with our faith tradition, and every Sunday we do a metaphysical lesson, which is hopefully an extension and support of what the minister's message is going to be, and also an inspiration for all of you. We are available to support the minister during the service and you after. So just to give you a little context. So in this metaphysical lesson, I'm going to talk to you about something that comes to my mind, which really has to do with the management of fear and also the role of your father or your father figure in helping with sort of shape you in terms of the management of fear, because we're living through a time where a lot of people are very fearful, and it's been pretty challenging, so I want to be able to address that. My process is that I read a passage, and then I talk about it, and then I have you guys talk about it. And since we're on YouTube and we're being filmed, I don't know how all of that's going to come out, but for people who are watching this on the channel, just do your best to sort of follow along and imagine yourself in the room with us as we discuss these things. So, recently I was reading in the LA Times an article about a postman from Carlsbad, and he is somebody who was very beloved in the neighborhood, and though the fact that a lot of people were unable to leave their homes, he got up every day, neither rain nor snow nor sleet nor hail or pandemic kept him from his job. So he kept going, and everyone was just really moved and touched by his efforts, and he had become a part of the community. But one of the things that happened was that somebody from the neighborhood wrote him a thank you note, and people have been leaving presents for him and things like that, but somebody wrote him a thank you note, and it featured Psalms 91. So I thought I would read you some excerpts from Psalms 91. And it's just a lovely passage about fear and relying on faith to overcome fear. But the other good thing about this passage is that when I looked it up on the internet, and I looked at the current version of the Bible I had, the upshot of that was I ended up getting myself a new version that was a little bit more clearer than the one that I had, and it's the New Living Translation, and it's in large print. Yay! 12 point. It's great to actually be able to read and understand your Bible. So I want to read you a little bit of the passage from Psalm 91, and remember, the Psalms are part of the devotional of the Bible, and a lot of people find many parts of that quite comforting. So it starts like this: "Do not be afraid of the terrors of the night, nor the arrow that flies in the day. Do not dread the disease that stalks in the darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you. If you make the Lord your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, no evil will conquer you, no plague will come near your home. For he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go." I just thought that was just so lovely. And it brought to mind for me thinking about my own father and what I learned about fear and the management of fear from him. And when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the fact that I can't ever recall a time when my father was afraid. My dad is in his 90s. He's a member of the greatest generation. He's a World War II vet. I'm sure there was opportunities in his life to be afraid, but I never witnessed it. His life was more about doing what you needed to do without fear. He traveled a lot. He was a university professor and dean. He switched jobs whenever he felt he needed to, rather than to cling to something that was no longer serving him. He had a great belief in his children, particularly my sister and myself. in an era when to elevate women was really, not quite the thing yet. He really expected my sister and I to go to school and to make something of ourselves, and was always very supportive. And whichever physical illness happened or whatever happened in life, I never saw him be afraid. I just saw him go forward. Even in the last illness which he has, which is Alzheimer's, he just keeps on going. So the lesson I learned about fear was to somehow feel the fear and do it anyway, and find a way to keep moving forward. So that's what I learned. So now I would like you to sort of bring up your father, or the person who was a dear mentor or father figure to you, and just bring that person to mind, and think a little bit about fear, and think a little bit about the lessons that you learned from this beloved father, this beloved mentor. And just kind of pull that into your consciousness right now. And then I'd like you to talk about with me, or share with me, what you learned about fear from that beloved person. And whoever wants to start, please go ahead. Yes, Rev Bev.
My father-in-law was really a father to me. I never saw him fearful. I saw him sad when his wife had a breakdown, and I remember him saying something like, I don't know what's going to happen to my girl. If he was fearful, he never let on. I just knew it as deep sadness.
Right.
He created such a nice family.
Yeah, I think that many men in that generation, particularly, they just kept going. And you didn't always see the fear. And we may have a different philosophy and approach in this generation, but that's what they did, and it worked really well for them. Anybody else want to share about what they learned about the management of fear, particularly about what's working for you now when you feel nervous or upset? What helps you, and how is that tied back to your dad or your father figure? Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
When I was born, my dad started a whole new business from what he had been doing. He had been a ranch hand and a foreman, picking oranges, working on ranches, and he got the opportunity to purchase a business. Giant leap forward from anything that he had done, and he stepped into it and did a hell of a job, did really well, kept kind of buying a different store and upgrading, buying a different store and upgrading. And so I got the privilege of, a successful run for my parents. And they even were able to retire at 65 with a nice little nest egg. A house was paid off. They were the type of the people that didn't want to have debt, so they paid it off as soon as they could, and the business made that all happen from them. So, talk about taking a risk, taking that quantum leap, and it's just all laid out for you. It all happens. And I mean, it's not like bad things didn't happen. Like, my dad asked me, do you remember when you were like a year and a half and we got robbed?
Yeah.
No, but he still went on and did very well. So, yeah, I kind of have a fearlessness, being able to take risks. Now I've got to use my head, do I do this or do that? But, my dad was just a great example of stepping into the unknown.
Well, that's great. And also, I think being able to have a firm base, creating a firm base for yourself,
Right.
in which to operate from.
Yes.
And of course, those were different economic times than we have now, but there were some really, really good lessons in that. Who else would like to talk about what they've learned in terms of the management of fear? Yes, Roger.
Having grown up in the 1940s and 50s, my dad worked as a factory worker, but he had no fears. And what I learned from him, number one, unless you have the money to do it, don't spend it.
Mm-hmm.
And he never believed in big loans and things like that, but he was a proud man, and as an only child, I never knew until I think I was 30 that my dad never earned more than $100 a week, and yet I never went without.
Mm-hmm.
It was something else. What goes on today, it's mind-boggling. But I think back of what I learned from him, from Boy Scouts, from explorers. He was the volunteer fireman in our community. He was on the Boy Scout Council, and he was unbelievable. And I never knew him to show any fear at all. He just tackled the problems and got it done.
Yeah, and I also hear too that he was very involved in your life, being involved in scouting really takes a serious commitment as a parent. And that's part of, creating that firm base. It's not just economics, but there's an emotional connection there, an emotional part of consistency for your children that helps create a base that you can work from later in life to, face whatever comes along. One last person. Anybody else want to talk about what they learned about management of fear and how it's helping them now? No? Well, I think that, as we come to celebrate Father's Day today and we celebrate the lessons and the support we received from our own fathers, or father figures, our mentors, and certainly, I have a lot to be grateful for to my husband, who is the father of our daughter, and a wonderful, steady man, and a good father for a child. And one of the things that I thought about when I got married is I really wanted somebody who was a very involved father, and that's how my husband has always been. So today I just feel grateful that in these times when there's so much opportunity to be fearful, that I can use that lessons and supports from my own dad and my own mentors to find a way to remain calm, to keep going, to support myself, to support the people around me, to have that firm base, and certainly seeing my father and the father figures around me as a reflection of that, the Heavenly Father, the God within, that supportive presence that's always there, always loving you, always providing that firm base for which to move forward. And anytime you have a fearful thought, going back to that loving presence within can really, and let that fill you up, is really that firm base that helps you to move forward with whatever happens in life. And so ends our lesson.